Welcome again, everybody. And tonight we're going to start venturing into the world of databases a little bit. Now, I'm still not going to get really heavy in the lesson one tonight, all right? But we are going to tackle one of the interesting parts of lesson one, and probably one of the most interesting parts of this class, to tell you the truth. And that is the primary and the alternate key. Now, some of the things we're going to do in first off, the tutorials we're going to do tonight are pretty straightforward. They're quick. If you watch the videos on them, you can watch them both in like 12 minutes. It's crazy. I'm going to take longer than that because I'm going to explain some things as I go through this too, okay? But the main thing is that, first off, the examples I'm going to show you tonight don't conform entirely to the conventions that I have that we'll use in the other stuff. When we work on our first full subject table next week, that's tutorial T01-02. We'll do that next Monday in class. I'd like you to do that, obviously, as part of your lab that you're going to do Thursday night. We'll talk about that toward the end of the class, all right? In that one, we'll use all the conventions. You'll use the subject table object that I give you. And you'll build your table from that. Tonight, there's going to be a lot of properties and things that we're not going to cover tonight. You'll see them and you'll say, well, that, you didn't use your thing there. Yeah, I didn't, okay? Because tonight is really about the keys. I really want you to just understand the concept of the keys, all right? Hopefully you've read that before you came in. It's part of lesson one, and it's right at the start of lesson one, but it's the most important part of lesson one. I am just going to launch right into this. Oh, but first, before I do that, Caleb reminded me, I have not edited those videos from the first two classes that we had, or first three videos I put out there from the classes. I have not edited those. I know there's some banter at the start of them. I did watch them to see when did I actually start into the class, and I wrote down at what mark they start. So look in the comments if you need to, and it'll tell you where you need to start listening, where you need to start from. Also on the second one, which was part 2 of the first night, toward the end, something goes crazy with the audio, where it keeps speeding up my voice at times and then cutting out and all that. And I noticed that happened on the first Zoom video when I first converted it. I converted it again, and then it worked fine. Now, in this second one, it won't let me convert it again for some reason. But I'm going to try on another PC and see if I can get that to work, okay? But just be aware that the last 10 minutes or so, it's hard to really follow what I'm saying, okay, on that one. I think the third one was fine, though. I didn't watch the whole thing. I skipped around, and I never heard it again. So I think that one was fine. Really, the first two were pretty much just introductory stuff. The third one was where I actually got into anything that was, I would call, substantial for the class. So let me share my screen, and we will start in with the lesson here. Okay. So this is out of lesson 1, and I'm going to skip right down to the examples. So I'm not going to go over all the verbiage on top. You can read that on your own. I'm going to say a lot of what's on top, though, in describing this. So, as engineers, we see tables all the time, don't we? I mean, but we're used to seeing these ones that have to do with, usually using them as parameters for some mathematical function or something like that. It might be in chemistry titration tables or something like that. In industrial engineering, it could be learning curve tables, things like that, And if you ever thought about those tables, usually there's a field or maybe a couple fields that are your independent fields, okay? And all the other fields that you see in that table, when I say fields, I mean the columns typically, okay? It's usually the fields are columns. Those columns that you see, the other ones are dependent on whatever set of values were in those other ones that we consider to be independent. You might have only one that's independent, one column that's independent, and then all the rest of the fields would be related to that. Well, that's kind of what's happening. In fact, that's exactly what's happening in relational databases. When you build a table in relational databases, a relational table we call it, you'll have at least one column that values are basically all unique and they're all there, and all the other data in that record, so all the other field data, is really related to that particular field. Now again, it doesn't have to be a single field, it can be two fields. In the case of two fields, both values together would be unique. In other words, you wouldn't see both those values repeat on any other record. The first value could repeat, the second value could repeat, but those values together should not repeat on any other record. Together they stand alone, and they're there, they're both there. Okay, they're required and they're both there. And every other field in that table then will be related to those two together, all right? That field that's independent, those fields that are independent, we call those the keys of the table. The most important key is the primary key. And the reason it's the most important key is it's the key that we will set relationships on between tables. When we get to the category relationship in lesson 2, we'll see that. I'll actually show you how the primary key value of a category record is then used on foreign keys in the other table. Now, we're not going to talk about foreign keys tonight. That's the third kind of key, all right? They're very interesting. They're the things that actually establish relationships. But the actual binding of tables to each other, records of one table to another, happen through the primary key. Now, in broad relational database theory, the primary key can be really any field. And in fact, it could be multiple fields. Again, as long as the values are unique and they're there, all right? But something happened about 10 years ago, and I remember this, okay, because I actually read the paper, and when it happened, I was I thought, it really made me think about it, where an author in one of his books wrote, you know, when you think about it, you only really need to have an artificial primary key on any table. Now, I know you don't know what that means. I'm going to explain that in a second. There is a field type in Access. All these fields that we have, like right here, you're seeing this table, and you see this first field that's called record identifier, and the other one that's WSUID, and then the student name, and then the student score. The table is called student. I made it student_1 because we're going to make a copy of it, right? But the table is called student. This is a table for students that are in a university, all right? So the subject is student. We say it singular, okay? It's what a record represents. It represents a student. And we use TBL, this TBL in front of it. That's my naming convention to indicate that this is a subject table. TBL means a subject table. So I could look at this right away and know this is a subject table and the subject is student, all right? Each of these records belong to a different student. But if you go in here and you look, you can see that name is not unique, is it? This happens a lot in the world, you know, where we have two people with the same name. I've had classes where I've had 3 people with the same name, believe it or not. Okay, so if I was making this a table for students in my class, I couldn't use this field as being a key, all right? What do we use at WSU as a key? WSUID, right? Isn't that unique? Every student, every faculty member has a unique ID. You know, in my life, I've got a lot of unique IDs. In fact, next to passwords, I think I have more IDs than anything else in data. All right, I think I got like 183 passwords, and I think the other day I figured out that I have about 100 IDs. Okay, do you ever think about those? Why do we have those? Well, it's because somebody put a database somewhere together, and they're using that basically to be your primary key for their record. All right. But again, one of the problems we have with primary keys when they actually represent something in the real world, like a social security number or something. I'll give you one. Social security numbers. There's a famous one. All right. Did you know that social security numbers are reused? So many years after you die, it will be reissued to somebody, and that's actually caused problems in some databases. I've heard about the IRS going after a guy because they said he hadn't paid his taxes 30 years ago. Well, he had died 20 years before. You know, and they had issued that to somebody else, you know, and went after a young girl or something like that. I think it was. But anyway, bottom line is, these aren't always that stable. And it's always been a problem for us when we develop our databases. What do we, because the primary key has to be stable. It has to be lasting. It is probably the one thing in the database that is that you never want to change. It's too difficult. If you change it, it cascades throughout your whole system and you have a lot of work to do. So again, what happened is somebody came up with the idea that all we really need to identify a record is some kind of artificial primary key that generates a simple integer number, and we'll use that all the time. No one will ever see it. It doesn't have any real world meaning, really. It's just there really to create a link. And I realized that this was a breakthrough. You know, I thought about this and thought about it. I mean, honest to God, for a couple months, this was on my mind constantly, because I realized that I could do so many things in this class so much easier if we just followed this rule that we're always going to use an auto number field to be our primary key. Now, what's an auto number field? It's a field that generates a number, a sequential number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's just a short integer all the time. Now, it could get really big if you have a lot of records, sure, okay? It really doesn't have a meaning. So if I built the record and I got rid of it and now I got a break in there somehow, that's fine. No big deal, because it doesn't mean anything. We're never going to do a calculation on it. We're never even going to show it to anybody, all right? But we do want to have a field that does identify the record, that does have real meaning to us. And if we can't do it with just one field, we'll do it with more than one. So in this case, this is my primary key. This auto, in every table that we use in this class, it will always be this field that's named aught star. Aught means auto number. Star means it's universal. And I've got several fields that I call the standard fields that are universal that you will never, ever not have and never change the name of. You will always have those in everything you do. All right, we'll get to that next week. But for now, just know that aught star dash record identifier is the name of the primary key that you will have in every table, not just subject tables, but every table in this class. Never delete it, never rename it, never try to change the numbers on it, because you can't. Once it's generated, it's generated. That's it. I'll get people who say, "Oh, I generated one and then I didn't save the record. I deleted the record and now it's broken." Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. Okay, we're never going to use it for anything. We're never going to sort on it. It is just there basically to establish links later on when we do relationships. So the good news is you don't have to worry about this ever. Okay, it's there. You don't have to touch it. Okay, I will show you it though tonight. Okay. But we do need a field that identifies it. And in this case, we have a single field that has unique values that we all have, okay? We have our WSUID. So I could use this as what's called my alternate key, right? Later on, when I need to talk about this record with somebody, I could use this to talk about it. It identifies everything else. So everything in this record, everything that you see here is related back to this. Everything in this, even though you got Vernon Wormer in here twice, okay, that's a different instance of Vernon Wormer, okay? It's not the same person, okay? It's different people, and they got different scores and grades, obviously. Fields that you require a value to be placed in is called a required field. Primary keys by nature are required. The auto number thing is going to generate something. You can't stop it. So it's always going to have a value in it as soon as you start creating a record. The WSUID, though, you'll want to put something in there. And if somebody tried to save a record without putting something in there, you'll get what's called a key violation, and they'll get an error message saying that you have an index that requires numbers or requires values in it. Okay, this particular field is a text field. You see it starts with TXT. Student is the name of the subject table, and then dash WSUID. WSUID is what's basically the field name. All right, this is part of my naming convention. You will do this on every field in every table. All right, and I know it's a bit of typing, but trust me, it makes things so much easier when you have to debug things or when you create an application later on. all right? And you get used to doing this. You just know it after a while how to do it, right? We also have the name, okay? You know what? I'm going to require that you have to put something in here too before you save the record. It wouldn't make sense just to have a student ID and not the name for it. So I'm going to make this field a required field. They're going to have to put a value in it. In this case, yeah, there isn't anything that could force it to be last name, first name. They could really type whatever they want. But later on, I'll show you that there are actually ways to do that too, okay? But right now, we're just saying we're going to require something in it. It's a required non-key field. So this is the primary key. This is the alternate key. This is a required non-key field. This is also a non-key field. It's a number field that's type integer, and it's the score, okay, of the student's score. But I'm not going to require this because, you know, I might have a student that drops, or maybe they missed the assignment or something like that, you know. So I don't necessarily have to have a value in here. Now, one thing I could do, though, is I could constrain these values, maybe be greater than 0 and less than 200 or something like that. I could actually write a rule for this field that will keep that in there. And if they go outside those constraints, it would put an error message on the screen saying you can't do that, what you just did. Here I've got the grade, TXT, student grade, one digit, one thing. Well, it could be C+, C-, I guess, something like that too. But also, I may not have anything. When I don't have a value in a field in a record, that's called a null value, all right? It means there's nothing, all right? But believe it or not, you can actually reason based on a thing being null or not null. All these are data values, obviously, all right? So that's the lay of the land for a table, all right? And even here, where you got A, B, C, maybe you got B minus, B plus, and all that. It'd be kind of cool to have this as a drop down, right? And you have something you could select from. I'm going to show you how to do that when we get to category relationships. It's a way to categorize the records is by having fields that have constrained values on them. All right, so that's one where I actually had a single field that could act as the alternate key, you know, where I had the WSU ID. But let's say we didn't have that. Then how would I do it? Well, now it's going to take some design. Okay, now you got to think about it, all right? We know the name's not enough, but I'll bet if I put the birth date and the name and use those together, I probably would rarely have people that had the same name and the same birth date, right? If I'm thinking about if this was something for my class, the odds of me having two students with the exact same name and the exact same birthday are probably so minuscule that it won't happen, you know? So in that case, you know what? I'm going to make the alternate key a combination of both the student's name and the student's birth date. And the birth date, I could even set it up to be a date time field. That's what the DTM stands for here. Again, you'll see these in a second when I go to the actual file. But see, it says right here, the two students have the same, we have two students with the same name. We have three students with the same birth date, but each student here has a unique combination of the name and the birth date. So this is not a problem. Does that make, you know, here's one of the things I'm going to have trouble with. I am so used to in this class, when I give something like that I think is important, looking at you guys saying, does that make sense? And you all raise your hand, okay? Obviously, being the way it is now, I can't do that. So I'm just going to take it that you've really been listening and you understand. Josh, thank you for the thumbs up. But right now, I'm only seeing 5 people at a time. So I don't know if everybody's giving. But I'm going to take it that you guys all understood that, hopefully. Okay. And again, you're always going to have the ability to watch this again, and it is in the lesson. All right. But that is extremely important because it will never fail that I'll have people who don't get this concept, you know, that the alternate key. Now, the good news is for about the first, I think, 7 or 8 weeks of this class, we're not going to see a multi-field alternate key. We'll always be single fields, all right? But at some point, we will start using multiple field alternate keys.
So are you saying that those two fields themselves create one alternate key, or are they both alternate keys themselves?
Yes, together okay. They make the alternate key. Those two fields combined make the alternate key, all right? So a primary key, the primary key, the auto number field, will always be a single field. Your alternate key could be either a single field or it could be multiple fields. It could be more than 2. You know, if I thought, for instance, that I may have a student who has the same name, two students that have the same name and birth dates, or multiple students that have the same name and birth dates. I may have to come up with a third field then and make that part of the alternate key. I've actually seen some subjects, believe it or not, where every field was part of the alternate key. It took every field to make a unique record. It does happen sometimes, all right? Kind of rare. In this class, I think there's only one time we ever see three fields on the alternate key, and that's much later in the class, okay? Now, I'm gonna give you a little, if you go look at the end and see my 5S, you'll see that there's a little tip there, and it's this, okay? Single field alternate keys, 98% of the time will be text fields, text type fields. Sometimes they might be date fields, and on very, very rare occasions, there'll be number fields. That's single. That's a single field alternate key, all right? But on multiple field alternate keys like this, you can have a mix of those, and it's usually a mix of those three. There's only three types of data that are typically used in an alternate key, and that is text, date, and numbers. Okay, and the numbers are typically integer numbers. Okay, but they could be real. They could be real. The date could be a time too. It could be a time instead of a date, or it could be a date and time. The date time field is actually a combination of both of them. Usually we just deal with dates, but I've had students who dealt with time, you know, for things like registrations and things like that in their databases. So, okay, all right. So let's move now into the tutorial, and I think a lot of this stuff will become a little bit more obvious to you when we get there. All right. Are you seeing this now where I got T01-01 your name ACCB? Okay, good. All right. So I'm going to run the tutorial now. I'm just going to make a copy of that. I always do that simply because, you know, I know it takes a little bit to download these things from Blackboard. Just make a copy. That way, if you screw up, you can just delete it and start over with your original. If you haven't figured it out, and I can't believe I have to say this every semester, but your name means put your name there, okay? So substitute your name where it says your name on all of these files, all right? Now I'm going to open that one up. Okay, and the first time you open any file, any Access file, you're going to have to enable it. After you enable it the first time, you probably won't be asked again unless you rename the file or you move it to a different folder. But just enable the content, now you're good to go. So here's Access, and I'm just going to give you the main thing you need to know about the Access environment is this right here. It's called the navigation pane. You know your file explorer, your file manager in Windows 10, it's like that. But instead of showing files, it's going to show you your objects. All right. Now you do have a save button up here, but that is not a save button for your Access file. It's a save button for whatever's open at any given time. And you can have multiple objects open. So it's whatever object is open and has the focus. Now we're only going to deal with one object right now, this table right here, all right? When I open it and you see that save suddenly become active, it means to save that table. This is that first one I showed you, this TBL student. I'm going to double click on this right now, and it's going to bring up its data sheet. That looks exactly like that diagram I showed you as the example, right? It's got this auto number field, it's got the student ID, it's got the name of the student score, and then you can see that this allows null values. This is almost like a spreadsheet in that you could type in it right now. If I wanted to put a value here, say 188 or something like that, I could do it. If I wanted to go here and put a score, I could do that, you know. Now you might notice this auto number isn't coming up in order, right? Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. It's just a artificial key that allows us to have a unique identifier on that record, so that later on when we hook them up to other things, we'll hook it up on that field. All right. But you do see my WCU ID, and they're unique, right? And we got the names, and they're not unique. I'm going to put another record in here just to show you what's going on here, okay? So I move to the next one, and as soon as I type in, you'll see in this auto star dash record identifier, it'll assign it a number. It'll probably assign it 13 or 14. I don't know where I'm in this all, but I'm just going to put a student ID, and I'm going to try to put one that's already there, okay? So I'll put J777J888. Now I'll move to the next one. Didn't give me an error there yet. Why? Because I haven't saved the record yet. How do I save the record? I can either come up here. There's actually a thing up here that says save the record. I can't remember where it's at. But the other thing is I could just move off of it, and Access will try to save it. But it's showing you right now that it's still in edit mode. I'm going to try to move off this right now. Let's see what happens. You must enter a name of a student. Oh, I forgot. That's a required. I made that required. So I better do that. I'm going to enter that. That's the only other required field I had. Now I move off, and you see what I get here now? The changes you requested are not allowed because you created a duplicate value in a key, basically, is what it's telling me. It knows that I made a mistake here. So I need to go fix that. Maybe I need to make it 99. And then if I moved off of it, yeah, now it works. All right. So that's kind of nice. You got some built-in smarts, and a lot of what we're going to be doing this semester is doing these kinds of things, building smarts into our data so that we can't violate any of the constraints that are on it, any of the principles for uniqueness or anything like that. We'll be building that, and it gets even grander, a lot grander than this. But anyway, I'm going to show you that that's what's called the data sheet. How did I set up these fields? Well, that's where we want to go. Design view opens up. By the way, you can toggle back and forth between the data sheet view and the design view. Right now I'm in design view, but if I go up here, I could go back to data sheet view. I go back to design view. You will do that a lot, not only here, but with forms and reports. You'll go back and forth between designing something and then going to try it out. Didn't work, I go back. Oh, now it did work. Okay, now I'm going back and design something else. You'll go back and forth a lot. Every now and then, though, save the thing you're working on so you don't lose it. When I save that right now, not only is it saving the structure of the table, but the data that I just put into it too, okay? Now, it was actually saved when I moved out. When I moved back here, I think it saved it automatically. So here's my definition of this table. The first field is that primary key field. Again, when I give you the objects that you're going to work from, that will be there. You won't have to do a thing. You can see it's given an auto number type field. And if I look at its properties down here, you'll see that it's a long integer, okay? Auto number is it's a special type, and it's only used for primary key fields. You can't use it to generate numbers on other fields. It's only there for the primary key. You can only have one in a table, and it will always be assigned to be the primary key. But it's truly a long integer, and that will come into play when we do a foreign key, when we get to lesson 2. The rest of this stuff you don't really, well, yeah, it's indexed. Yes, no duplicates. We said all the values in that need to be unique. So it puts what's called an index on this field. And what an index does is, as I add new things to it, it automatically sorts it if it needs to. Okay, now on a primary key field, there's no sort set, but I could set a sort on my alternate key field, and then when I add a new record, wherever that should be in the list of things, it will create an index that's already pre-sorted. Now you won't see it until you actually do a sort, but it speeds things up dramatically. Okay. People often ask me, what's the biggest difference between using a database and using a spreadsheet? Speed, pure and simple, okay? If you only have a few records like we have now, you could sort really quick in an Excel spreadsheet. But what if this was a database for the IRS where they have hundreds of millions of records? It could take all day to sort things. It could take all week. But believe it or not, with when an index on a field, it will do it really quick. And in the case of keys, they are always indexes. Okay, that's how Access deals with them, as if they are a type of index. All right. So the primary key is a type of index. where the values are unique and they're required. And again, they will always be there because you get a number that's generated and you can't delete it. The WSU ID is a text field. You can see it right here. It's called a short text field. There's a long text field. Okay, I'll tell you the difference between those next week. But for now, just know that short text is usually a field where the text is 255 characters or less. All right. Now I showed 255 out here. I could have made it 6. Well, is that right? No, 8. 8 is a WSU ID. I could have made it 8, and that way if anybody typed in more than 8, it would give them an error message, or it wouldn't let them do it even, okay? Next week, we'll show you about how to constrain what can be typed into a field with input masks and formats and things like that. And default, we could add a default value. No, we won't want that on something that's going to have unique things. But what we do want to do is we want to make sure that they actually put a value in here. All right. Now you might look down here, and if you've read ahead or if you know Access at all, you probably know about the required field. Most people would just say yes there, and they think, okay, there it is. All right. Here's the problem with that. All right. The required field will generate a very cryptic message, not even telling you where the problem was. If you just say yes, and you don't have any other way to validate that. Most authors, if you look at anybody who's worth their while writing books about Access, and even other databases will tell you a better way to do this, and it's the way we will always do it, is to say is not null as the validation rule. In other words, there's got to be a value in here. And if that's violated, we're going to put this text on the screen that says you must enter a WSU ID. I get that. If that popped up on the screen, I would know I have to go to that field and put a value in it, right? And you can put whatever you want here, whatever kind of message you want. And we'll see next week that these validation rules could get a lot even bigger, okay? It doesn't have to be just to test null. We can test on an integer if it's greater than 0 or something like that, and still give a message when it's violated. Again, I'm not going to go through all these, but this allows 0 length. Always keep it at no. Don't ever make it yes. And in fact, I think it comes up yes by default, so you're going to have to change it every time. And then indexed, okay? We want this to be just like this index. We want everything in here to be unique and required. Well, we took care of the required right here. To make it unique, we're going to say index it yes, no duplicates, and we can do that right here. Right then, doing that, I just made this an alternate key field. Now, the other ones, name, it's also text field. I'm going to let it be big. But again, I want this one to be required. But I'm not going to set its index. I don't want this to be an alternate key field. All right, so I'm just going to leave that as no. Score, you can see, doesn't have anything. It's just an integer field, and grade is just a text field. I could have made this just 3 or something like that. That'd been fine. I don't want to require anything else like that. Now, I'm going to go back again to the data sheet. You see at the top here, these are kind of cryptic. Okay, that's how you want to name the field, but that's not how you want to show it to people. Next week, I'm going to show you that you can write a caption, and it'll put the caption there then. The field will still have this name, but it'll put this, substitute a caption up there. So it's like an alias for the field. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. So now that's that one, okay? What I want to do, though, is I want to build the second one where I don't have a WSU ID, all right? So to make this easy, and I'm going to have to turn off, I'm going to turn off your faces here because otherwise I don't see the whole screen. All right, let's close that down. And now just going to go out here and do a copy and a paste. Now I know in my example and in the tutorial, I told you to do structure only. If you do structure and data, that data that was in the data sheet will come over. If I do structure only, it will just get the field definitions. It'll wipe out all the data. I'm going to leave the data in here right now just to speed things up, but it's worth your while to say structure only and then do what I just did. Practice typing in and see what happens when you try to violate things. But I'm going to make this student 2. Again, I wouldn't have this _1 and _2. I'm just doing this for the sake of tutorial and to learn keys. So now I'm going to open up that student 2, and if I double click on that, you'll see it's exactly the same as the other one. It's still got the WSU ID. So I'm going to go out to its design mode now, design view, I should say, and I'm going to delete the WSU ID. So all I did was come over here to the left side in there, and I'm going to highlight that field basically. And then I'm going to right click and do a delete rows. Now, this confuses some people. They think when they're hitting delete rows, they're deleting records. No, you are in the design view, and the rows right now are the definition of the fields. So if I do this, you'll see that it's going to say I'm going to delete that field, and it's going to permanently delete it and any data in there. I'm fine with that. Get rid of it. Yes. Okay. Oh, you know something I forgot to do on the other one? Let me go back to the other one. I meant to show you something. I'm going to open its design view again. So I'm in student 1 again. If you look at the top here, it says indexes. If I open that index, you'll see that it shows me that the primary key right now is that auto number field. And it even shows me its properties that if I got to highlight it, highlighting, you'll see that it says it's the primary key and the values in it are unique. And that's what you always want it to be. If I go to this one, that's KAI, that's the index name that I gave it. And you can make it alternate key if you want to, if that's easier for you. But in my conventions, I use this. This is one of the places where the convention is optional, really. You can make it alternate key if you want to. But KAI student means it's the alternate key for the student table, that one right there. And I'm using this field, and you can pick it off of there, okay? So WSU ID. The reason that was here, because I already specified that in its property. On a single field, you can specify it in its property, and it's here automatically. When we do a double field, though, you're going to see that we're going to have to come back here and do it ourselves. And ascending is the order of the index, so that, again, it's in the background sorting things all the time. It will always make it sorted in ascending order. You don't have to worry about that. It's doing it for you. All right, I'm going to close down that 1 again and go back to 2. So now I'm in 2. This is 2. I'm in here. You see the auto number. I just deleted the WSU ID. And what I want to do is I want to add a new field that's the birth date for the student. So birth date's date time field is DTM, student, and then dash birth date. Okay. By the way, if you've got more than one word, some people go birth space date. Just do this. Okay. But whatever you do never have a blank in here. All right. Never have a space. I'm sorry. Never have a space in here. Don't ever do this. Always make it one contiguous name. All right. If you have to use underscore, go ahead. Don't use another dash, okay? Dash is a symbol that we'll use to know the difference between its table and its field value. I'll get my insert on. There we go. Okay. So it's a date time field, so I'll go pick that off the list. There's a whole bunch of different types of fields. I'll go through these next week. There's only, believe it or not, a handful that we'll use a lot. Date time. In fact, there's some that I'm going to warn you never to use. And again, we'll get to that next time. So it's a date time field. And I could do something like, say, it's a short date, you know, so I could see it in the typical month, date, year format, or I could say medium date and it comes up like this, or I could have a long date and make it look like that. I could do all those are different settings you can make on this. But I want a validation rule on this one too. We know the name already is required. It says is not null. I want to do the same thing here. Is not null. And in fact, and it doesn't have to be all uppercase. You can just type it whatever way you want, but you got to type it like that. I also want to constrain the range of my date. Okay, in other words, I don't want anybody who, you know, really put in a year 1534 or something like that for somebody's birth date. Conversely, I don't want to go past today's date. I don't want somebody put in somebody who isn't born yet, okay? So I'm going, and this could be whatever length you really would want it to be, but I'm going to just do this for sake of demonstration. I'm going to say and. Now on dates, this is one of the few times you're going to have to remember a little bit of a code, all right? On dates, you have to say hashtag to indicate the start of the date. And I'm going to say 01-01-1900. I give you a lot of examples so that you see this, okay? So I'm sorry, I should have meant and between 01-01 Whoops, I typed too quick. And now I want whatever the date is when they're using this, okay? So I could put today's date literally in here, or I could use a function. When, you know, all those functions that you use in Microsoft Access, most of them are workable here too. And one of the ones that you could bring back today's date on is now. So now with parentheses, obviously because it's a function, this would now say that they have to have a value, and it has to be between January 1st, 1900 and today, basically. There's other ones, there's date, you can use date here, date in parentheses, it will work the same way. And then I want to give them a message in case they violate that. A birth date is required and must be between Jan 01, 1900 and now. All right. You could play with it. I mean, I could have said maybe, you know, now, am I going to have a baby come and be in my class? Probably not. I could have said minus whatever number of days, you know, so if maybe they need to be 18 years old, I could, or let's say 12 years old, I just take 12 times 366 and whatever number that is, make a subtraction, and then it would range to that amount. But we're going to leave that like this now. I don't need to say required. Like I said, never change required to yes. If and then on this one, we also don't want an index. So we're pretty much done with that one. All right. Now, the thing is, those columns are going to come up in the data sheet, how they're placed here. So again, highlight that and then click on it. You'll see that little ghost box there, and then just drag that up, the line up, to be under name. And now they're in the order that I kind of like to have them in. Save it right now. Just make sure you're saving it, okay? And if you get things that say about the validation rule and all that, don't worry about that. I know we obviously we put a validation rule in here and we have data that we haven't put in there yet, and that's okay. We could go and add that later, all right? All right, now we've done that, but there's a problem right now, and I'll tell you what it is. We want the name and the birth date to be part of the alternate key. And right now, name by itself, oh, it turned it off. Okay, the name, oh, I'm sorry, that's wrong. We didn't have an index on name, okay? So we're good, actually. We're good to go. We have no alternate key set right now. Was there a question? I thought I heard somebody start talking. Okay, if not.
Josh had a question.
I'm sorry?
Josh had a question in the comments.
Yeah, I had a question in the chat, but I can just say it.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if we wanted just their birth year, not the whole birth date, would that just be like a number field? Or?
Yeah. Okay. Josh, you're asking a really good question, and I'm going to give you a quick answer, okay, but there's a better answer, okay? It's up to you. All right. It depends what you want to do with that field. If you're ever going to do math on it, it might be easier just to have it as a 4-digit integer, okay, between 1900 and 2020, okay? All right. But if it is honest to God a date where you need to compare dates to each other, then you want to have it as a date. All right. Now, the good news is there are ways to convert it on the fly too. Not necessarily convert the data, but if the use of the data, you'll be able to do what's called a calculated field where you could change it from a date to a number to do math on it if you needed to do that, okay? I have students who've done it. In fact, there's another way to do it too beside that. You can actually do it as text if you wanted to. But again, it's going to depend on what you want to do with it, okay? If you're really truly wanting to, let me put it this way. If you ever think you'll need to expose the month and the date too, you probably want to have it as a date. All right. But if it's just the year, then it's up to you, basically. All right.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And guys, I'm sorry, I don't see your chat. That's why Aziz is monitoring it. And if he sees something that's really important, he'll cut in on me. Okay. He'll let me know. All right. So we've got that set up. If I go to indexes now, you'll see that all it has is a primary key. By the way, I should tell you something. Let me close that down really quick. I'm going to go up to the primary key field. And you see as soon as I move there, this highlighted. if I click that right now, it would remove that as the primary key. Don't do that, okay? Again, you never have to mess with anything that has to do with the primary key in this class. It is set for you. You never have to deal, and don't go exploring. Don't go changing it, because then if you try to change it back, it may not accept it, all right? So the only thing you have to worry about is the alternate key. So I need to set the alternate key now, and I need it to be these two fields. I'm going back to index, and again, I could call this KAI student if I want, or I could call it alternate key. That's fine. If you just want to call it that, you could do that, all right? Now, I want it to be the field name, and ascending's fine on name, and I also want it to be the field birth date. So don't say alternate key again, just pick it right after that one. And that's going to know that this one has two fields as its alternate key. And you could change the birth date. In fact, on dates, I do this a lot, where I want the date to be the most recent one, usually when I do a sort. So I make that a descending. All right, so now that's done. I've got my alternate key defined, basically. I could close that down, and I could save it. Let's go out to the data sheet now. Now you'll see I've got this birth date, and it doesn't have any values in there because I just added that field. So I'm going to add those in here, and I got to go down in my tutorial so I can see what those are. Boy, is it going to let me do that?
A quick question.
Yeah.
You said it just automatically knows that you're picking that field for the alternative, right? It just automatically knows.
No, I had to do that.
Well, you did it the first time, but you picked two different ones to do for the alternate key.
On this one, yes. All right. On the first one, it knew because, let me go back. On the first one, it knew because on WSUID, I set the index to be yes, no duplicates.
Gotcha.
When
okay.
I did that, it placed it in there. Now I had to name it. In fact, when I did that, as I remember, it made it TXT student WSUID and then TXT student WSUID. So I went back and I renamed that to be KAI student. All right.
Okay.
But that's the alternate key, just so I know that that's the one I want for the alternate key. Because it turns out you could have any field indexed, okay, but you really want the ones to be, there are no duplicates to be your alternate key. All right. On the other one, because we didn't have indexes on those fields, name doesn't have an index, birth date doesn't have an index. We have to index them together. All right. Does that make sense? The reason I didn't index these things, no duplicates, is because I may have people with the same name. I may have people with the same birth date. I want to make sure that nobody has the same name and birth date. Okay, and that's what this index right here does. Good?
So does that mean that if you're not worried when there's a student that has both the same name and the same birth date, then you can just directly change the index to yes duplicate without having to type it in?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, so my question is, like, if you're not worried to face a student with the same name, two students with the same name and the same birth date, does that mean I just have to change the index to yes, or do I still have to do the same process?
Oh, yeah, you have to. The point is that we can have a student that has the same birth date. Are you saying that what if I knew I would never have two people with the same name?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
okay, yeah, then that could be my alternate key.
Okay, so can I just change the index to yes directly?
On name, yes.
Okay.
Okay, but then you would need to get rid of your alternate key. This alternate. I'm going to do what she's saying. Okay. Well, I can't because, well, I could do it on birth date. Okay, let's pretend that I'll never have two people with the same birth date. Okay, I could come in here and I could say, there's a drop down for it. Yes, no duplicates. And now I just made that an alternate key field. If I save it, go up here, and you're going to see it's there now as one of the indexes. Okay, and it shows that on that. It's not primary, but it is unique, and that means it's an alternate key. All right, means that I don't really need this one then, right? It would be redundant because I've already said that birth date is always going to be unique. I would never have this situation really. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Whoever
Yeah.
okay, I don't usually don't have people having trouble with this. Okay, let me try it again, all right? Let me delete this.
I think I still don't understand what the index is for. Maybe that's why.
And that's why you really shouldn't worry about the index part of this, okay? All I'm saying is that on an alternate key field, it will give it an index of yes, no duplicates. I didn't have to do it there, by the way. Let me go back here. All right. Oh, geez. I'm going to mess myself up here now. Let me go back here. If I turn this back to no, all right, I go back and look at the indexes. That index is gone now, but my alternate key is still there, made up of those two fields. Let me go here, and maybe it'll be easier once you see it, okay? So right now, I've got these values, all right? Take a good look at them. Do I have anything that's duplicated?
No.
Truth is, no, I don't, because Vernon is spelled differently on these two, right? If I only had name as my alternate key, let me go back. Well, where am I at? I'm in 2. Okay. Let me go back here. If I had name as my alternate key, I'm going to get rid of the alternate key I have right now. I'll get rid of this field. All right. So now name is my alternate key field. That's it. Okay, so I'm expecting that I will never have 2 students with the same name. You see what it did? It automatically made it indexed yes, no duplicates. Yes, oh, it says duplicates. Okay, it should say no duplicates. Yes, no duplicates. That's because I forgot to set the property up here. So yeah, now it's unique. Okay. All right. So it said, so then that's my alternate key right now. All right. I'm going to go back, hit that, and then I'm going to change his name because I misspelled it to be Vernon. Right. And I'm going to move off of that. And you see what happens? I've got 2 values in here now that are the same, and it's wanted to be unique. All right. So I violated the key basically. All right. I didn't mean to get you mixed up about indexing. Indexing is something you could do to any field, but in Microsoft Access, the way to make a field an alternate key is by giving it a no duplicates index. All right. If it's a single field, you could do it right on its index property. But if it's 2 fields, you have to do it up above in that index. Let me get it. Oh, it's not going to let me do this. Let me get out of that. I have to do that back up in the index property. So right now I got name, and I really want name and birth date together. I expect that I'm going to have students that have the same name, and I expect I'll have students that have the same birth date. But I don't think I'll ever have 2 students that or more that have the same name and birth date. Okay. So I'm going to make that my alternate key. What that did now is it's created an index over 2 fields, all right? So if I look at each one of those fields and its index property, it should say no. But together they're going to have this. Now this one I'm going to have to fix because I had it set to that when I showed you that. Let me fix this really quick. Alternate key field, yes, okay, we're good on that. All right, and now I have to fix this one to be no again. I want this one to be no. The thing to just remember, the rule of thumb here is when you have a multiple field alternate key, each of the fields in that key should have no. All right, together they'll have an index that's no duplicates right here. Okay. If it's a single field, it'll be the single field will be no duplicates, and you could actually set that right there in the index property. If this is too confusing, just don't set the index property here. Just go up to the top and do it there, and then it'll be fine. Does that make sense? Who asked me that question anyway?
It was me, Joyce.
Joyce, okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes more sense now.
Okay, all right. If doing the index down here in the property list is confusing, don't worry about it. Just make sure they're no when you build it, okay? And then go up here and create your alternate key. If it's a single field, it'll fix it down here automatically, okay? If it's not a single field, if it's a multiple field, it'll just do it. It'll show here. It won't show anything. It won't change anything down there, okay? I think that should take care of it now. All right, so let's go back and we'll bring this up. And I'm going to change Vernon, this to Vernon now. Remember, it gave me an error before, right? It shouldn't now. Yep, it's good now. So let's put birth dates in here. What do I have for those? Let me see. I got two PCs on at the same time, so I have to go back and forth here to look at things. For some reason, my laptop's being very picky here. Okay, here we go. Give me a second. Almost there. All right. There they are. Okay. So I'm going to type in some birth dates here. Again, I could use the date picker, but I got them in all kinds of different years. So I'm just going to go and enter them in. Let's see. 12/12/1989. I'll go down to the next one. What's this? Oh, gave me a little problem. Good. Caught that. All right. 1/3/1990 and 8/22/1963. Old guy. 8/22/1963. So that's part of the primary, the alternate key, but it's allowing two values there, just like we had two values here. But again, we're going to have combined, they'll be unique. 12/12/89. Now watch what happens on this one. Is this Vernon Wormer? Yeah. Oh man, I've got different values in here. I must have changed it at one point. But let's go and put 12/12/1989 here. So we will be duplicating those two values. And I get a violation error. Good. Maybe I meant this should be 1999. Okay, let's go that. And 1958, really old guy. Okay, and you can see I can move off of that last record, and it lets me, as long as I put my name in there and I've got a date, it's let me establish the record basically. I could come back later on and then add a score or whatever else I needed to do on it. In fact, I could change the names, okay? Maybe by some miracle, Vernon Wormer became Rachel Green. What should happen? Well, nothing, because they don't share the same birth date, right? But if I try to change this one to 12/12/1999, I should get a key violation, right? And I do. So to go back to the value I just had to hit escape and it reestablished that for me. So anyway, that's neat. Let's try some things here, okay? I want to put in, we said that we're going to limit the dates between 1900 and now. Okay, so let's put a, and let's say we accidentally type in 12/17/1899. Let's go and say that doesn't work, right? Test the upper limit. Let's say we say 2021. That's not going to work. But if I put 20, oh, 2019 or something like that, that works fine. So that's good. And again, I could put other constraints on these, but does that get the point across about the keys? Okay, again, this is an important concept. If you haven't read lesson 1, that first part, read it, absorb it, understand this, okay? Because believe it or not, we will be 5 weeks into this and I will have people still making the errors like indexing both fields in a multi-field alternate key and things like that, you know, or not putting the alternate key in at all, you know. You have to have an alternate key on every table. Now, some of the tables I'm going to give you, some of the objects, table objects, will actually have it built already, or at least partially built, all right? Because we know how we're going to establish a record on those. But for subject tables, that's those that start with TBL, it is your responsibility to put an alternate key on them. Now, one question I typically get at this point is, can I have more than one alternate key? And the answer is sure. You know, let's say, for sake of argument, that this was a class that was only made up of American students, all right? They would have their WSU ID and they have a social security number. Either one of those could serve to identify the record. I could put an index, an alternate key 1 on one of the fields, an alternate key 2 on the other field, all right? Obviously, I could also put them on both of those fields if I wanted to. But typically, I'm only looking for you to come up with one alternate key. I won't ever ask you to put multiple alternate keys on a subject table. I had one about 3 years ago, I think it was, where there were like 7 fields that could have been the alternate key field for the table. And again, any combination of those could have been alternate keys too. But typically, like I said, most of the time, I would say about 90% of the time on subject tables, you'll have there'll be a single field alternate key. Something will be a unique value. We'll have unique values that identify all the records, okay? And about 10% of the time, you may need 2 or more. All right, kind of rare to have more than 2, but again, there's one we'll do in this class that will have 3, and I've seen them have as many as 6 or 7. If you get into that situation where you're using a lot of fields to be your alternate key, you may really want to think about the design of your table. You may really have something else that you could be using. All right. Okay, I'm going to close this down. I think that's all I needed to show on this. Yep. I had a student ask me once, he said, what if you had phone numbers in here? You know what? It's kind of unusual for 2 students to have the same phone number, unless maybe if they're in the same family. But nowadays with cell phones, everybody having their own cell phone, yeah, that could serve as an alternate key field, you know, if you really wanted to. So again, a single field alternate key, it's typically a text field. Multiple field like we have here, I've got a text field and a date time field. And again, in rare situations, you may have a number field. If it was something like, maybe everybody had a rating and everybody has a unique rating, you could use that, you know. But I really kind of shy away from those. I would rather use something that's text and very descriptive. Okay, I hope that made sense to you. And again, you'll have this video to watch again, and you have this lesson to look through, and you will do those tutorials if you haven't done them already, and that should help you understand it a little bit more. So with that, I want to go in and what I do with my list of stuff. I want to show you one other thing that's out there for your pleasure. In the references, there's one that's called RB, and it is a breakdown of the different keys and how they can be used. So the primary key, it's on all tables, it's always required, it's always an auto number field, you'll have just one of them on a table, it's always going to be indexed, yes, no duplicates, blah, blah, blah. It's always required, and it's always going to have this convention. So that one you never, ever have to worry about, okay? Toward the end of the class, I'm actually going to show you something cool that you can do with the primary key. The alternate key is the one you'll spend the most time making. Do a good job on them because they will cascade throughout your application. The single field is the one we'll use the most, but we will get into multiple field ones later on, all right? Depending on the type of table, it could take on a little bit of a different flavor. The ones you really want to be concerned about are the subject table and the lookup table. And then those are the only ones that would ever use a single field alternate key, our subject tables and the lookup table. And on the lookup table, I'm going to build it for you. Okay, you're never going to have to do that one either. And then on multiple alternate keys, you can have them on subject tables, you can have them on supplemental and auxiliary tables, and you can even have them on junction tables. And in fact, on junction tables, you often see 3 fields instead of just 2. And we'll do that at some point. But know that they take on a multi-field will take on different characteristics depending what type of table it is. All right. This is just a reference thing that you go back to refer to when you are actually out there creating your projects or building a database on your own. Then maybe you forget how to do a multi-field alternate key on the supplemental table. It'll jog your memory a little bit. So I just wanted to show you that really quick. And I'm still getting this thing where the thing drops down over my screen. All right. So in our syllabus, this Thursday, you will do Lab 1. We will not meet. All right. Lab 1 has a lot of the mastering access videos. You will watch all those. You will watch the videos for these first 2 tutorials if you haven't watched those already. And you will watch the tutorial video for T01-02. That is going to be very much like what your A01 assignment is going to be. And we will do this in class next Tuesday. I'll attempt to do most of A01-02. It's a longer assignment. Now, if you watch my tutorial, it goes pretty quick because I'm pretty fast at doing this. All right. It'll take you a lot longer, I promise you. Okay. But watch that, try it even before we get together so that when I give you all these little tips, you'll understand because you've already played with it a little bit and you'll be able to really listen and concentrate and get what I'm going at. Some of you have already started well into this and you want to actually get going on A01. I don't care. If you want to do that, feel free. It's really not going to be assigned to you until next time. But since some of you want to get going on it, I thought I may as well just go through that assignment for you right now. A lot of this you will not understand. After next Tuesday, you will, all right? But for those of you who are getting a little bit ahead and understanding this, I don't want to keep you from going ahead if you want to. So this is going to be 2 parts. On the first one, you're going to create a subject table for vehicle. So you're going to have different records for different vehicles. And again, you'll have that primary key. I'm going to give you the object you will use. It's in a file called A01-01-yourname.accdb. And in there, you'll see that the alternate key is already set. You're also going to see that there are 3 other fields that have stars in them. There's one that's called ATT star dash attachments, one that's called MEM star dash notes, and another one that's called MEM star dash data revisions. Those 4 make up what I call the standard fields. You will always have those fields in the subject table. You will never delete them, all right? And you'll never change the names of them. So they're there, and so you're already on your way on 4 fields, okay? But then I give you all these other ones that I'd like you to do. And you're going to set the properties, and we'll do this next Monday. You'll do it when you do the next tutorial on your own, and when you read ahead, you'll understand what these are. You're going to set all the properties, and then you're going to populate that with at least 5 records, okay? And among those fields, you're going to have at least 30 of them. One of them is the primary key. Then you got these 3 other ones. So then you got 26 others. One is going to be an alternate key field. That's going to be the VIN number for the vehicle. VIN numbers are unique, okay? But you want them all in uppercase, and I'll teach you how to do that next time. You're going to have a purchase date that's a required field, but a sales date that's not a required field. In other words, the field has to be there, but we don't require a value to go in there when the record's established. Why? Because if we have a vehicle, we obviously have purchased it, so we want to put the date it was purchased in there, but we may not have sold it yet. We may still own it, so we don't want to actually we could have a null in there because we still own it. And then we're going to actually check the sales date to make sure it doesn't precede the purchase date of the vehicle. In other words, whatever date we put in for the purchase date has to be before the sale date, okay? And I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's called table validation rule. We'll do that. Other purchases and information will be in there. We'll have memo fields. We'll learn about those. That's the long text field. Those are fields where you could do basically anything you want. They're like a little word processor. And then I will show you a couple of these that I compiled. Then after you do that, you're going to build one of your own, where you get to pick the subject and you do it. And the only thing I'm going to constrain you on with that is you don't do another vehicle one and you don't do a student one like I did tonight. You're going to do one that you figure out and you're actually going to build, and you're just going to have to do a few fields, but there's certain kinds I want you to do. Again, we'll learn about validation rules. We'll learn about the different constraints on the field, the properties. We'll learn about, you'll see more about the naming conventions, all that next time we get together. So now I'm going to try to bring back your beautiful faces here so I can see you. Well, I can't see y'all, obviously, but are there any questions before we break up here now?
When did you say
Sorry.
Adam, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, sorry about that. So assignments 1 and 2 are due on the 8th, like on Blackboard?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's submits out there for both of them already. Okay, make sure you put each file where it belongs. Okay, because you have 01-01 and then you have 01-02. Make sure you put them in the right submits. Okay.
Awesome. We don't need to like zip files or anything like that.
Nope. And my policy on the submit is you can submit as many times as you want. I'm going to grade the last one. All right. But make sure you get them in before the deadline, because at the day when it hits noon on the day it's due, that thing disappears. That submit disappears and you're out of luck. All right.
Awesome. Thank you. You're
welcome. Anybody else?
No.
Arthur?
I'm good.
Okay, good. All right. If you have any questions, let me know. Again, if you're a little confused, watch this video again. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. I'm sorry if the index thing caused a little bit of confusion. They're there. I'll talk about them again later on in the semester when you feel really good with this. But know that the keys are incredibly important. And the way you manage them is using that index icon at the top. And that will only be there in design view. It won't be there in data sheet view. Okay? And by the way, I'm glad I thought about that. Never design from the data sheet. Always design from design view, okay? Because trust me, you will screw things up, okay? I do all the time, and I've been doing this for 30 years, all right? Always go into design view whenever you need to change any kind of structure, whether that's deleting fields or adding fields or changing properties or anything else. Do it from design view. Don't do it from data sheet. Why Microsoft put that there, I will never know. Okay, because all they did is make a mess when they did. All right, always just manage data from the data sheet. And by the way, I'll show you more about things you could do with the data sheet to help you manage your data next time when we do our bigger example. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Study hard Thursday. Get ahead on things. If you're behind already, catch up, please. All right, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.